You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is a communications trainer and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, there's a topic that we've done a number of times before on this podcast, but it always seems to be a popular one. It always seems to be a helpful one. It always seems to be one of those topics that people can put to use right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I call Paretoing your presentation.
Yes.
Paretoing your presentation. Pardon me?
The horse that we keep beating and beating and beating.
Yeah, the horse that we keep beating. But for some reason, people seem to love it. It's like, how do I live? Because it's basically, how do I live my everyday life? And of course, everyone wants the answer to that. So
we're not advocating animal violence.
Yeah, we're not. Do not beat any actual horses. And by the way, just so everyone knows, no horses were beaten in the making of this podcast. Yes. So anyway, let's do the Paretoing of the presentation. And by Paretoing, I mean, Pareto is basically the 80-20, the 80-20 rule. So what are the 20%, the small, quick things that you can do that are going to get you 80% of the result? Mm-hmm. Our lives is about getting the 100% of the result. But let's, in real life, a lot of times, your boss pokes his or her head into your office and says, hey, in 30 minutes, I need you to give a presentation. And so you don't have time to get 100% of the results. So these are the few things that you can do that are going to get you the bulk of the results. Mm-hmm. And the first thing on my mind is answering the three questions. And we've done this before in this podcast, or we've mentioned this before on the podcast. The three questions are, who am I talking to? What do I want them to do? And why should they care? And again, and if you've never talked to these people before, it might take you forever to go through these three questions. But, a 30-minute presentation that your boss, wants you to give in 30 minutes, you're going to know who you're speaking to. So it's only going to take you about 2 minutes at the most to answer these questions. So it's not a big cognitive load that we're suggesting you subject yourself to. It's a pretty quick thing to answer these three questions. So again, the three questions are, who am I talking to? What do I want them to do? And why should they care? And it might be something really simple. Like, for example, if you are in the marketing department, let's say you're in the marketing department and you are getting ready for an email campaign. Who am I talking to might be as simple as the other people in the marketing department. What do I want them to do might be as simple as put out an email. Mm-hmm. The why should they care might be, well, if they hit their targets for the month, open rates and, conversion rates and all that stuff. If they hit their target for the month, then their lives are going to be easier. So that might take you maybe it doesn't even take 2 minutes. Maybe it takes you 30 seconds to run through this step. Mm-hmm. So that's the first step. And the second step that I have in mind is follow a simple story structure. You've only got 30 minutes to do this. So you need something quick. And rather than panicking and just throwing up a bunch of graphs and hoping for the best, use a story structure. People respond to story structures really well. And don't try to get fancy. Just use a really simple one. And probably one of the simplest story structures that I've seen is man and whole. Man and whole is basically one down, one up. What is the problem that we're trying to solve, and what are we doing about it? What is the problem, and what are we doing about it? That's man and whole right there. Okay. So again, if you're using let's say you're talking about your email campaign to the marketing department, and the email campaign is trying to boost sales that have been flagging over the past month or two. So your man and whole might be that sales are down and we're going to try this the next month to try to get them back up. That's man and whole right there. And so you've done your three questions. You've given your presentation. Yes, a basic story structure.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third step would be to make sure that your headlines match the message that you're trying to give. The people in the room, you're going to have time to talk to them, and they know you, so they're going to be a little more patient with you. So, and if they have questions, they're going to feel a little more free to ask them. So face to face, you don't really need this as much, but still there are going to be some people, like maybe your boss or your boss's boss or somebody like that, is probably going to read this presentation in the back of a taxi cab on the way to the airport. And so you need to make sure that your headlines give your message. If the person in the back of the taxi cab reads only the headlines, that person needs to know what was your message. And a key part of that is to give your headlines on each slide, to give each slide's headlines some active verbs. Rather than just saying sales summary for last month. Maybe you say sales are down, or sales are down in XYZ sector.
Okay.
And that gives your presentation a little bit of movement. So when the person is in the taxi cab riding on the way to the airport, they're not thinking this presentation is boring. So Alper, those are the 3 things that I recommend if you only have a few minutes to Pareto your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything that you want to add about that, or anything that I should be clarifying?
Well, before I add something that comes to my mind, don't let my calm listening fool you. I have my set of questions and
Of course.
pushbacks
Of course.
to some of the things that, by the way, not complete pushback, because if someone asks me, okay, I have 30 minutes for this presentation, give me 3 tips.
Uh-huh.
Those would be exactly the same tips. So
Okay.
you and I are completely on the same page.
Okay.
But
Uh-huh.
I mean, due to my nature, I'll give you
Sure.
some pushback, especially on the first 3 questions. I mean, you also said when you were talking about them that I know who I'm going to talk to, I know what I'm going to tell them, and I know what I want them to do.
Yeah.
So why should I mean, I have 30 minutes to an important presentation that my boss is asking me to do. If I already know the answers, why do you think I should dedicate any remaining minutes or time to figuring out some questions like that, which I already know the answers to?
2 things come to mind. One is that it's going to be really short, since you're speaking to people so you're not going to be spending you're not going to be spending 5 or 10 minutes of your 30 minutes on this. You're going to be spending maybe just 20 seconds on this. But the reason that I mention it, no matter how short the time, whether it's 20 seconds or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you spend, it can be as short as 20 seconds, maybe even 10. Maybe you already know the answer. But the reason that I include this step is simply that it's so important a step to presenting in general that it needs to become habit. Do not get, even though you already know the answer, and even though you only have a few minutes to put together the presentation, do not get so lazy that you skip this step, because this step will be critically important in future presentations where you might need to think about them for a couple of days, and you're going to need this step then. So you may as well get used to the practice of including this step, even if it's only 20 seconds and you have to give a presentation in 30 minutes. Get used to this step. Make it a habit. So that's why I include it.
Okay. I agree with you, and I think it's a great habit to have for any kind of speeches or any kind of presentations. Yeah. Yeah. It's good to hear that from you. I don't think I have more pushback. I feel kind today, but
thank you.
I may have one more recommendation, and you're welcome. We're treating each other so nice today. It's Friday after all. I think one recommendation that I would add to those 3 wonderful questions would be on the technical side. And that would be going through your slides one by one. And it's not going to take too much of your time, but go through them one by one and see if any of them are coming across to you as crowded. And if they are, if it is very easy to do, you can just slice them up into 2 slides or 3 slides. But this may be a little bit time consuming. I understand that.
Yeah.
So if you feel you don't have that kind of time, just start selecting objects on the slides and assigning them the build animation, the most basic, nothing fancy, nothing intricate, just the regular a peer-built slide. What that will do
Uh-huh.
is when you're talking about your slides, everything will start coming one by one.
Okay.
And what that will provide the audience with will be they will enjoy being able to focus on you when you're talking, because there
Okay.
won't be anything else on the slide to focus on unless you talk about that and you hit your remote or your keyboard or whatever and for the item to come onto the slide. The reason I say that is it's one of the tools which I believe has the strongest impact in terms of audience attention and retaining their focus on you. And it's the simplest and the easiest one to do.
And let me make sure that I understand what you mean by builds. You're talking about, like, for example, bullet points, making sure that the bullet points, you have 5 bullet points, for example.
Yes,
A build is making sure that all 5 don't show up at the same time. First,
exactly.
one shows up, and then the second one shows up, and the third one shows up, and the fourth.
Mhm.
So, okay. So go ahead.
I'm not even questioning why there are 5 bullet points, and I think there shouldn't be. But come on, we have 90 minutes left into the presentation. We're not going to go into philosophical details or
Yeah.
content limitations on each slide. No,
Uh-huh.
the presentation is on. You have 80 minutes now. We just wasted one more minute.
Uh-huh.
So for the sake of argument, for the sake of making things easier to follow and understand, just start selecting things and giving them build animations.
Okay. Sounds like a good suggestion. So to sum things up, so this is our suggestion for Paretoing your presentation. So your boss sticks his or her head in your office door and says, "Hey, in 30 minutes, I need to give you a presentation. I need you to give a presentation to the marketing team or something. In 30 minutes, I need you to give a presentation. Good luck with that." And so now, as the fear is welling up inside of you and you're thinking, "Oh man, I need to do a presentation in 30 minutes. These are the things that you can do to get the biggest bang for your buck, basically. These are the 4 things that you can do.
I think they will drastically improve your performance,
Okay.
and the investment for that is minimal, but the returns are pretty high.
That's true. All right. So thank you very much, Alper.
Thank you.
We have once again beaten a dead horse, but again, I wanted to state that today no horses were actually harmed in the filming of this podcast.
Yes, and I'm sure this won't be the last beating. I have that sensation.
Yes, I'm sure that we will beat this particular horse again.
Poor thing.
Poor thing. All right. Thank you, Alper. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.